Alright, hello, I'm the Silver Kyle, and I have finally seen Spider-Man Homecoming. I know I am way too late. I have barely seen any movies in theaters this year, but I did see this one and I really wanted to talk about it because I love Spider-Man. So this is the third version of Spider-Man that we've seen on the big screen, and I'm okay with this because Spider-Man is finally home. He is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So this does take place. It's the same Spider-Man that we saw in Civil War last year, and this is the continuation of that. So it's a different kind of origin story because we've already been introduced to him. So he's already been bitten. He's already turned into Spider-Man. Uncle Ben has already died. And a lot of people are very happy with this, and I'm one of the few that isn't. I'll explain that in a second. So this is more so the story of Peter Parker being a young version of Spider-Man, the youngest that we've ever seen. He's still in high school, and I think they even said that he's like 15 or 16 years old, so he's quite young. And he has this power of becoming Spider-Man. So he'll be at school, he'll be waiting for 3 o'clock, all anxious, and then he just goes out and becomes Spider-Man for the rest of the day. And he's so excited. And I like that, because that's, if a kid... When I watched Spider-Man or I read Spider-Man comics, I was like, oh, I would just love to have that kind of power. And I would just... That's exactly it. I would keep my secret identity, and then as soon as school was done, I would just be being Spider-Man for the rest of the day. Like, that's all I would do. And I like that about it. I very much like that touch. I also like that, to an extent, Spider-Man is a very witty character. He's almost like a Deadpool to an extent, but not as crude. But in this movie, he still wants to have these snappy comebacks, but he's trying to figure out, okay, should I say this? Should I say that? And how should I, like, he tries to figure out what pose would be better. It's kind of funny. And I like that because it just shows that he's still very much a young boy. He's not a man yet. And that's kind of like the origin for what he is. Now, the problems with this movie is that the only depth that we really got with characters was, to an extent, Peter Parker, but not nearly as much as we have in previous series. Before I felt that Tobey Maguire, we got very much attached to his character and really understood where his character was coming from. Whereas this one is just basically Spider-Man wanting to do more things because he did Civil War. He was on par with the Avengers, and now he just wants to be a hero like that and waiting for the next big, big mission from the Avengers. But Tony Stark isn't calling upon him, so he's only saving cats and stopping people from stealing purses. Like, it's very petty stuff. And he wants to do bigger things because he has this amazing power. And we only have him kind of doing that thing, and it's interesting, and that could have worked. And then the other character that we got some character depth to was Vulture, played by Michael Keaton, who I thought did a pretty good job, and his reasons for becoming the Vulture were quite interesting. But I wanted to see a little bit more of that because I thought that's really cool. So can I see a little bit more of this? I think that if we would have seen more of Michael Keaton's character, it would have been that much better, and he could have been an even better villain than he was. He was probably better than most Marvel Cinematic Universe villains, but I still wanted to see more, especially near the end. There's a post-credit scene that kind of explains the relationship between Spider-Man and Vulture. And if I'm to believe that, I needed to see a little bit more because we're just assuming things, and it doesn't really make that much sense. Anyway, yeah, it's very hard to explain without spoiling anything. Another thing is that there's one specific scene at a prom in the third act where a character just randomly shows up at the prom, and I'm like, that's not possible. That character would not be able to be there that soon with the information that we just found out before the prom. That's not possible. How is that? That doesn't make any sense. But it happened, and it's kind of like that's how I felt with this movie. I felt that they kind of said, okay, this is what we want this scene to be, but they didn't think of how to build up to that scene and how to create it. It's like, okay, we have to still think of, like, time for one, but also pacing and also building up moments, because I didn't feel that connected with this Spider-Man. And that's why I wanted Uncle Ben to die in this movie, because one of the biggest things for Spider-Man is with great power comes great responsibility. You're supposed to have Spider-Man as this kind of social outcast that people pick on, that the people either don't pay attention to or bully him. We didn't really get that. Flash Thompson is completely not what he's supposed to be. Good actor, because I saw him in Grand Budapest Hotel, and he's fantastic in that movie, but he does not go well with the role of Flash Thompson at all for this. He's very different. I didn't like it. He was kind of like a bully, but not the jock Flash Jordan. Anyway, Flash Jordan. Flash Thompson? What's his name? Flash. Whatever his name's supposed to be. So you're supposed to have Spider-Man as this social outcast that nobody pays attention to, that has a crush on Mary Jane, and then all of a sudden he gets this amazing power of Spider-Man, and then he just doesn't care anymore because he's Spider-Man. But then Uncle Ben dies, and that's when he realizes that he has all this power, that he has to do good with it. And we don't get that with this Spider-Man. They actually had one scene. There's a bank robbing scene with an ATM. And there's a big destruction scene after that. And I'm like, here, this is your chance. If you're not going to have Uncle Ben dying, then you can have this and make Peter Parker realize that, you know, I've got all this power. Maybe I shouldn't just be joking around so much and taking these things seriously and not just using my powers just kind of willy-nilly and just, oh, I can beat these guys. He should have just tried to take them down as soon as possible, seeing the amount of power that they had. But he doesn't do that. He never learns from that lesson. You never really get a scene where Peter Parker learns that he has this amazing power and he has to use it for good. And, you know, he's still just being a kid, basically. And still trying to prove himself to Tony Stark, which is too bad. Because they could have really... I think that would have just made this movie so much better. So had, you know, a scene where Peter Parker realizes that he has a lot of power. Also having more with the Vulture, because that could have been very interesting. And then not had so many scenes that kind of didn't make sense. There's another scene, too, that it didn't... I feel that the movie didn't really know what it wanted to do. They had a character death, and I don't think there's, like, too many people that die. I think there's only one character that died in this movie. And it kind of just happens out of the blue, and they're like, oh, is that what that does? All right, moving on. And it's like, is that supposed to be comedy? Or is that supposed to show how dark this character is? Because they never show that character's dark again. So I guess that was supposed to be comedy. But that's like the only death. And it's like, this felt like an entire kids movie, honestly. It didn't feel like it was geared to adults at all. Which is too bad. I felt that a lot of the humor in high school, which I normally love high school movies, but it all just felt very generic. And I was like, I don't know. And I will say also that the last scene... I felt I really couldn't see anything. The last big finale, it's very dark, and I didn't really know what was going on, or couldn't see what was going on, and it was just kind of boring. And that sucks, because Spider-Man is supposed to be one of the coolest characters, because he's web-slinging and everything. He has a really cool scene on a boat, and I thought that was really done well, because you could actually see what was going on. But the last finale, just no. So I have to give this movie a 6 out of 10. I really did not enjoy this movie as much as what I've heard a lot of other people. They were saying that this is one of the best Spider-Mans, and I fully believe that Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 1 and 2 were far superior to this one. Not even close. So 6 out of 10. It's okay. I hope that in the next Avengers movie we see a better version of him, and in the next movie of Spider-Man we see more with his character, and that it's just done a little bit better. Like the pacing and just the script of scene to scene to scene, have things make sense is what I want. So thank you all for watching. You've been Bearded In. Beardage.